This week on Personally Speaking, our guest is Jared Allen. He's a Hall of Famer for the NFL. He's our guest in Personally Speaking. Stay with us. Hello and welcome to Personally Speaking. I'm your host, Msgr Jim Lisante, and Pro Football Hall of Famer Jared Allen joins me now. Jared is a former NFL defensive end, best known for his dominant pass rushing career with the Minnesota Vikings. In addition to the Minnesota Vikings, Jared played for 12 years in the NFL for the Kansas City Chiefs, for the Chicago Bears, and for the Carolina Panthers. He is a five-time Pro Bowler and a four-time first-team All-Pro who ranks among the league's all-time sack leaders. Jared is dedicated to philanthropy through the Jared Allen's Homes for Wounded Warriors Foundation, which builds and remodels accessible homes for injured military veterans. He's married to his wife, Amy, and together they're the parents of two daughters, Brindley and Lakeland. Jared is here with us today to talk about his faith and about the faith and values that matter the most to him. Joining me now, I'm so pleased to welcome to Personally Speaking, Pro Football Hall of Famer Jared Allen. Our thanks to Jared Allen for being with us. And Jared, let me begin with a question that always means the most to me. You see a picture behind me of my own parents. I know what I have from them. I know what they have taught me in life, what I value. When you look back on Ron and Sarah, your parents, and the way they raised you, what did they do right?
Oh, goodness. Man, they did a lot of stuff right. I think one was love was obviously ever present.
Mm,
I think that's important, even through the tough times. I think, I had my fair share of failures and fair share of disciplinary moments or corrections, as they like to call them these days, right?
right?
But love was always at the center of it. I think at the end of the day, they taught me valuable lessons through life, hard work, determination. And to be honest, I think there was a lot of luck in it too, right? I think parenting, as a parent myself, you try to do the best you can, but, at some point, the messages they put into you or they teach you, the lessons they teach you, you personally as a kid or as a human being, you got to find ways to, for applicable, or what's the word, a practical application, right?
Right.
So I think for me, what they did right was, you know, they instilled a base fundamental via faith, first and foremost,
Mm.
and then always had a leash long enough to kind of get in trouble and test those applications. And then there were strong corrections at times, right? And then, like I said, love being ever present. But I think those are kind of the cornerstones of what they did right.
And Jared, did you know that whatever mess you may have gotten yourself into as a young person, did you know without a doubt that your parents would love you always and forever, no matter what?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I was terrified of my dad for sure. So there's that fear factor. But yeah, at no point would I'd ever feel like I was going to be abandoned or dismissed. He might have threatened it, but no, definitely love was a cornerstone. I think my dad did a great job of always allowing a space where I could come to him and just say, "Hey, Dad, can we forget father son, man to man?" And he might not want to hear what I had to say, but in those moments, there was no repercussions for what we were going to talk about, right?
Right.
And then there was the other times where dad was definitely supreme boss and the end all be all. And then even in those moments, I might get my butt chewed, spanked, whatever it was. But then, short memory, let's move forward, always there with a hug. I actually had a football coach one time. It was my senior year. My dad came in and he tore me a new one for missing class and all sorts of stuff. And he gave me a good old fashioned. My dad used to poke me, right? He never used to really whoop me, but he would poke me. My dad's a big man, and he gave me a good old fashioned butt chewing and poking me in the chest and all that stuff in front of my coaches. And then the next day of the game, giving me a hug, telling me, "Look," I remember the coach saying, he's like, "Man,
Great.
I love your dad come in there and whoop your ass and then come back and give you a hug." So it was definitely, one of those deals where you knew where you stood with my old man, and especially, and I spent a lot of time in my childhood with my mom. When my parents split, I spent majority of the time with my dad. Sorry,
Okay.
and you definitely knew, like I said, that it was coming from a place of love. It
Yeah.
was tough love at times, but definitely love.
Okay. Jared Allen's our guest. Now, Jared, let me ask you this. It's a hypothetical question, but you are blessed, along with Amy, to have two beautiful young daughters. I mention that because it's different with sons and daughters, but with these two daughters, would you let them date a young version of Jared?
No, not a chance. Not a chance. No, we're trying to hold off on that. I think, I look at the whole. I'm not there. My oldest is 13. My youngest is 11. Right, so we're definitely not in the dating realm anytime
Right,
soon.
right.
But I look at it as, you want to be tough because you've earned the right as a girl dad to set some really strict boundaries and some standards that these boys are going to have to adhere to. So I'm going to have fun with that for sure. But the reality is, I think, you know, younger version of me, no. Hopefully, older version of me, absolutely. But I think what I look towards is what their parents are, right? Like in all seriousness,
Yeah.
anybody that's going to be around my kids, I want to know their parents thoroughly. I want to know what they're about, what their belief systems are, how they handle certain things, right? And to be honest, I get a little discouraged when parents don't want that same, they don't come to try to seek me out and try to find out what I'm about, what all that
True.
kind of stuff. So that's kind of the approach I take with it. So young me, absolutely not. But if a young man's got a decent father who seems like he's got his crap together, then I think we'll be okay in the long run.
That's a great answer too, and very honest of you too. I did three weddings this past weekend, and I don't want to just give some canned talk on love and marriage. So I always say to the couples, before I preach, I want you guys to tell me why, of the billion people out there you could marry, why is this the one? And some people do a great job, some a lesser job. But if I had asked you why Amy for you?
Oh man, that's a long-winded answer. I'll be honest with you. I can think of 1,000 reasons, but one is, this is going to sound just kind of cliche, but I mean, when we met, I knew that she was God's answer for me.
Uh,
I just knew it. We had faith in line together. She was one of the first women I dated that was my age, that was independent, that had a college degree. And when you're young and you're trying to stay single, you purposely date the wrong people, right? And I used to I used to literally, I pray like, oh man, Lord, let me meet somebody that makes me forget about all these other, people.
right.
And that was the truth, man. When I met her, that was my singular focus. And she held me to a standard of excellence that I would hold myself to in my professional year, but she held me to that standard of excellence in my personal life. And that's what I really admired most about her. And we were able to talk about our faiths, our childhoods, our family. We could just talk for hours. So it's cliche to say that I married my best friend, but she's truly my best friend. But I say, again, she was independent. She's smart. She's quiet but insanely strong. And our core values just were in line. And I knew that, she was that prayer that I've been praying. Like if I was ever going to get married, find somebody, Lord, like you got to give me somebody that is, and I tell people that it's hard to tell your wife, like, oh, how did I know I loved you right away? I never thought of another woman after I met you, but it's the truth. And
Yeah.
and so it's one of those things where, as a young man in a professional sports world, to have someone captivate my attention, and not just my attention, like my soul, like my heart. I truly can say I never knew what real love was until I met her.
A guy I think you know who had been a guest a while ago on our program was Nate Solder, and he told the story of his young 2-year-old getting cancer and him and his wife having to figure out what in life was nice, good to have, but what was absolutely necessary, what wants are versus needs. Do you and Amy have it figured out in terms of, all the stuff, all the blessings are nice, but this is really essentially what we need to make a happy family. Have you guys figured that out?
Yeah, yes and no, right? Like I don't think you ever have it figured out. And if you think you do, like then you've missed that whole point of continual learning
That's
and
true.
continual growth, right? And so for me, again, I try to take these same philosophies in my step. If I can just be better,
Hmm.
even in football, I used to tell people like, I'm just trying to fool them one more year, right? I'm just trying to be better than I was the last year. And so I try to take that approach in my marriage and in my walk with Christ and being a father, right? Is if I can just try to be better. And it's tough to learn from that. But I think at the end of the day, we 100% know that like fiscal blessings are awesome, but it means zero,
Yeah.
right? In the grand scheme of things, means nothing. And if anything, it's harder to raise down to earth, humble children when you have financial blessings and you have a nice house and you have things in abundance. It can look as if those are the important things, but I think we do a great job of humbling our kids from this standpoint. My wife and I, we've never had nannies. And no offense to anybody who does, and you
Yeah.
have two working parents or need babysitters. We've been blessed for my wife to be able to stay home with our kids, right? And then now that I've been retired, we're both at home with our kids all the time. So our nuclear family is tight, and we sit down and we have dinner every night together. We're at sporting events. I coach my kids. So I think what when I say we haven't figured out from the standpoint, we try to teach our kids through example. I mow my own lawn. We garden. She makes bread, right? We're cooking meals. Like, so they see mom and dad physically working, physically doing what they need to do to live, right? So they don't see us depending on others for whatever we need to get done. They see us doing things. And I think in this day and age, when you have such a instant gratification, society, and a society that is look at me, look at me, look at me, for my kids to see their mom and dad who haven't made in the shade according to them, right? Uh, Physically doing things day in and day out and being busy, but also being present. Yeah, we got that part figured out. And I think, showing up is 90% of it. The
Yeah.
rest of it is I'm constantly learning, right? With girls as a man, I'm learning tone, I'm learning emotions, I'm learning, and I'm constantly failing at that, right? Like, what is this nonsense? She's like, you need to stop it. You're gonna make them rebel more. You need to just chill. Um, but I think we have it figured out as a couple of that and the aspect of that, we hold each other accountable too, right? Like my wife's not afraid to tell me if I'm acting like an idiot, or if I'm out of line. And, and again, same thing. We know how to communicate to each other. And I think, we know what's important to each other. And I think the greatest gift I can give my children as a father and husband is to,
Hmm.
especially as a girl dad, for them to see how I love their mother.
Yeah.
And that goes back to the original question about dating. And I think that's what they'll seek. They'll seek someone that loves them the way I love their mother. But yeah, so I think, from the wants and needs standpoint, we definitely know that we are not in want. And we definitely know that God had, blessed us and all of our needs are covered. But
Yeah.
it's a daily grind to show the kids that you need to work for yourself. You have to be able to take care of yourself, right? And we go to biblical and just, it's the whole give a man a fish, teach him to
Right.
fish.
Right. Right.
I want to teach my kids to fish.
Yeah.
Right. I want to teach them to be self-reliant, self-sufficient, and not need to rely on another person for their happiness, for their security, for any of that. And that's what I think we try to, that's kind of our need, right? Those are the needs we have to give to our kids, and that's what we try really hard to do.
Jared Allen is our guest. Jared, you brought up the God piece, and that God of ours is awesome in so many ways. But you specifically in the Hall of Fame celebration mentioned Jesus Christ as the center of life. I just got to ask you, is that something that happened for you as an adult, or was it from day one in your life that Christ was at the center of who you are?
Yeah, I grew up in the church. I did. My parents are both Christians. I used to tell people, like most young men, I had that heart rate monitor, relationship, knowing I was out acting crazy, but like, oh Lord, get me through Saturday. I won't do it again. I promise you. Um, and never had the big flash of light biblical thing. I've always just grew up knowing that believing in Christ is better than not believing in Christ. And I can just inherently know he's there.
For those who don't know, Jared Allen, famous guy, great athlete, successful Hall of Famer, all that. But he knows that for all the blessings he's been given, we're also supposed to give back. Jared, one of the things I know you got involved in, and I think you initiated in many ways, was this concept. We had Ben Hall on from Fox News, who lost an arm and a leg over in Ukraine covering the war. And he just talked about the adjustment of dealing with a body that's not your body anymore. You've been sensitive to wounded warriors and trying to give them homes that can handle their new life. Tell us a little bit about how you got into that.
Yeah, so I had a buddy in '07 who was in the army, and he had told me a little bit about the gap in adaptive housing, and I really
Mm.
wasn't in a space to to do much about it then. So then I went on, and my whole family's military. So my grandfather was 23 years in the United States Marine Corps. My uncle was in the Marine Corps, Air Force, brothers, Air Guard, Marine Corps, all that stuff. And so I went on a USO tour in '09, and I got to see like just the small daily sacrifice. I got to see basically our men and women over there firsthand of what they were going through, right? And and when I got back, I just knew I had to do something. I had to do something to give back. And with the military being so present in my life and in my family, that I started thinking this concept. I'm like, there's really like, what is home to me, right? Home is my most comfortable place or my most safe place at my most vulnerable times. What's the American dream for me? Well, I think, a home, yard, dog, two and a half kids, whatever the average is, right? And so it's like nobody deserves the American dream more than the men and women that protect it. And so I dug deeper into the gap in adaptive housing, and that's when we started Jared Allen's Homes for Wounded Warriors in 2009. And nutshell, we build and remodel homes to make them handicap accessible for some of our most severely wounded vets coming home from Iraq and Afghanistan. And then we give them the house free and clear, no mortgage, nothing. And so we've been doing that forever. We have some fantastic partners. I think we're on like close to our 30th home. And yeah, we keep plugging away. We do anywhere from, probably 4 to 6 homes a year. And depending on the calendar years is constantly going like this, so it can be in any given month. But we try to make it very family friendly. I got two main employees and then our bookkeeper, so we got like 3 employees. But we have so many great national partners, and we're able to build all over the country. We allow our men and women to live where they want to live. And we try to become one big family and give them support that they need, they want, and they can be as involved as they want, as little as involved as they want, after. And so it's just one of those things, I'm a firm believer that much is given, much is expected. And I hate using the word obligation because I don't feel obligated, but it's definitely a duty,
Mhm.
to a country that I have taken so much from,
Yeah.
to give back.
Let me ask you too, Jared. For folks who watch and listen to a program like this who may be blessed with means, how can they specifically support what you're trying to do?
Oh, you can go to homeschoolwarriors.com and you can donate right there. Yeah, I mean that's pretty the plain and simple of it is you can and you can see all of our vet stories and stuff like that. We do, we're the recipient of some fun competitions. So sometimes like there's the Mullet Champ USA competition. You can check on that. You want to support someone growing a sweet mullet? Absolutely do it. But easiest way is just, like I said, I think H4WW, the acronym Jared Allen's homeschoolwarriors.com or woundedwarriors.com and or oh, sorry, homeschoolwarriors.com. And you can see our whole story right there and reach out and donate either via the website or you can always, reach out email wise and get a hold of Amanda or Alex or somebody like that.
Jared Allen's our guest. Jared, many years ago, the first athlete I got to be friends with was a guy named Mark Bavaro, who used to be tight end for the Giants. I mentioned that because we were doing fundraising for homes for unwed mothers and helping them and their babies. And he had no problem. He came and he spoke and he raised lots of money for the homes for the women. I just mentioned that because I know even then, for having faith and for being pro-life, that Mark Bavaro got a lot of grief. I remember even when he would take the knee at games when he caught the winning touchdown, that the Sports Illustrated would say, keep your faith to yourself, Mr. Bavaro. We don't want to see it or hear it. When it comes to issues that might be controversial or people don't want to hear about, do you get any kind of grief from people for being who you are, saying what you believe? I mean, and if you do, what do you do with the fact that there are people out there who, if you express opinions, may not like you very much?
You know what? Lucky for me, a lot of people have had issue with me for a lot of years, so I don't really care. That's, I mean, I can be abrasive at times. I get it. That's how I grew up. No, I don't. First of all, I don't put much stock in what other people think of me. I really don't. I think that's actually a gift from God that I've just
Right,
never.
right, right.
I don't really care that much.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, and I mean that's serious, but in seriousness, I try to approach it from the standpoint, and this is, I had a pastor tell me one time that if you try to bring someone to faith, right? And it's like trying to give someone a steak for the first time. And
Mm,
you oversalt it and you put all this seasoning on it, and you're like, whoa, and it's way too intense. They're never going to come back to eat steak again, right?
yeah.
And so a lot of times with the controversial issues or tough things to talk about, I try to come from a place of understanding,
Hmm.
and say, okay, hey, let's just let's just pretend you're completely right, right? And then ask questions.
Yeah.
I try to sometimes I just ask people, I'll ask questions to get other people to defend their stance. And if they can't defend their stance, say, well, hey, it was, for example, I got good friends on both sides of the aisle, believers and
Right, right,
non-believers,
right.
and Republicans and Democrats. I mean, they're some are far right, some are far left, and most of us are in the middle. But when Roe v. Wade got overturned, it got put back to the state. So that was a hot topic for a lot of people, right? And we had friends that were very strongly opinionated about pro-choice,
Hmm.
and ripping off and what you find out is a lot of people snap because someone attacks the attacking starts, right?
Right.
So, I was able to bring these people back and have a long conversation and have a conversation. I said, hey man, if you felt like I'm one of your Christian, Republican friends, like you could have called me and asked me what our opinions are versus making a blanket statement, right? Like I didn't make a blanket statement, so why should you make a blanket statement? And I think that's the way I try to approach those things because nothing's black and white to realize. I tell people all the time, I don't think our issues in this country or in this world are this or that. It's an and. Most of the solutions are an and problem, right? And I go tell people, as a Second Amendment, I believe you can have gun control and gun rights and protect the Second Amendment.
Yeah.
I believe you can. I think you can have, and talk about abortion. Like I think you can have strong stances on being pro-life and have compassion for the circumstances that are unspeakable, right? Or if someone's life is in the light, like we can't always paint this blanket brush, right? And so that's kind of how I try to approach it. And I usually get a lot of good feedback, and a lot of times the people that are very opposing, and what my whole point is I'm hoping that they can see Christ's compassion in that.
Yeah.
And at the same time, like if you get people to calm down, a lot of times you can get your message across better, right? So, and listen, I can be a hothead. I have very strong opinions, and I can stand my ground, and we can argue and fight with the best of them. But at times, like, there's a need to listen, and there's a need to be able to communicate in that with a softness. And I have found that that when I handle tough situations that way,
Mhm.
right? When people all of a sudden now they're less defensive and they're more receptive, and you can just kind of be like, I mean, maybe let's try thinking about it from a different angle. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of times you can get people to be kind of like, yeah, I see what you're saying. And I think too, I think there's a misconception out there that, especially from the Christian side. Well, first of all, us as Christians have to realize that Christians can be wrong in a lot of situations, a lot of times, right? Like the holier than thou kind of perception that can get out there in the world of, especially in the world of politics, needs to be stepped down because I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, the most humble human being on the face of the earth ever that walked was Jesus Christ. I mean, you look what I mean. You look what he said. I didn't come to save the righteous; I came to save the sinners. Right? I mean, this guy was with people with leprosy. I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here, but I think what happens is Christians we forget that, and we try to be so adamant,
Yeah.
right? And we forget that it's actually not our job to change people's minds. It's our job to witness. It's our job to be an example setter. But it's God that got to water that seed. We plant the seeds, but He's got to water them. And so I think a lot of times if we take that softer approach, we can touch more people, we can reach more people, and people have a greater understanding of compassion, or that we need to have more compassion sometimes and not just be so hard line because then our message spreads further and faster. And again, that's a long-winded version of
No, no,
how I
no.
handle
It's perfect.
situations. Yeah,
Jared Allen's been our guest. Jared, you reminded me the last answer you gave of our Pope Francis, who just went to God recently, and he shocked the world by saying and judging the whole gay community, say, "Who am I to judge?" And that he applied that to lots of places in life, and it actually brought more people back to faith by a
yeah,
shepherd saying, I'm working for Jesus, and
yeah.
Jesus hung out with everybody, and that's got to be our challenge to be that kind of understanding.
Yeah, and I think the tough job, especially of people in God's service as yourself, right, is is having that compassion and understanding, but holding our truths, right? Because there are truths. The Bible there's truths in the Bible. Because I'm
True.
I'm not a fan of the prosperity gospel, because you can't teach people, again, it's the whole hate the sin, not the sinner. And that's kind of the approach I like to take.
Yeah.
And again,
No,
If I'm over here judging anybody, my glass house is broken, you know?
yeah,
So I just try to, understand that we're all flawed. We're all sinners. God doesn't necessarily view, my sin as any less than a sin that, the world might consider abomination.
yeah.
And so, I 100% when Pope Francis said that, it's a true statement, right? Like, who are we to judge?
Be
We are here
consumed
to
in God's
be
love.
shepherds of God's word and his
Yeah.
people, and we don't have to fall into the nonsense, right? But we also don't have to sit in judgment and scorn people and push them away from, what our job is, right? The Great Commission, to go out and spread God's word.
I want to thank Jared Allen for being with us. Jared, I'm doing this 30 years. I think the first one I ever did was the film director Frank Capra of It's a Wonderful Life. But I mention all that because sometimes guests, especially when it comes to issues of values and faith, almost like present themselves apologetically. Like, this is what I believe, but and they're not willing to just say, this is who I am. Take me as I am. God made me
Yeah.
this way. And I love this interview because, Jared, I don't want you ever to change. And if somebody's offended by
Thank
your
you.
forthrightness, that's their issue. But please, your witness is key, and you give it so beautifully. And tell Amy she did well. She married right.
Oh, thank you. Babe, come in here. So no, I do appreciate that. And again, it was actually funny. She asked me, she was like, why'd you choose this podcast? You get offered all these podcasts all the time, right? And time is valuable.
Yes,
But
please.
I think it's important when you have an opportunity to sit and have honest dialogue about faith, right?
Yeah.
I think it's very important. I think you know, more people and more leaders, especially when you can smooth those edges of what people think of these, like staunch, Christian establishments, if you will, or even religious establishment, other, right? And then you get to know the people. I think that's what, obviously that's what anything is. It's about the people. And like you said, when you can connect with people, you can change hearts. And I
Yeah.
think
That's what Paul
anytime you get a chance to have these conversations and people can see authenticity, it's huge.
Thank you, Jared. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much.
God bless you,
Have a
my
great one.
friend. Thank you. Pray
Bye.
for us. Thanks for being with us on Personally Speaking. If you need to reach me, you can do that at personallyspeakingpodcast@gmail.com. You've probably been listening to this program on the Catholic channel on Sirius XM. You can also watch it on YouTube, searching under Personally Speaking with Monsignor Jim Lisante. We're also on CatholicTV.org. You can see us on Facebook at Personally Speaking with Monsignor Jim Lisante and on Instagram at Personally Speaking Podcast. I'm privileged to serve as host and executive producer, Personally Speaking. Our producer is Lisa Jandovitz. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll be with you again next time on Personally Speaking.